The rain had lingered all night, slow and relentless, soaking the cracked sidewalks and dripping from the sagging gutters of a weathered small-town house. It wasn't much, a peeling white porch with loose steps, and a roof that sighed in the wind. But it was home, the only one Luke had held on to for the past 5 years. He trudged up the porch with the heavy weariness of a man who carried more than just a long day at the garage on his shoulders. His boots squelched against the wet wood as droplets slid steadily off the brim of his faded baseball cap. And that's when he heard her. "I'm not asking for a handout," the voice stammered softly from the shadows, trembling but determined. I just need somewhere to sleep tonight." Luke froze mid-step. For a moment he thought he imagined it. But then, as his eyes adjusted, he saw her. Tucked beneath the porch overhang, curled tight against the biting cold, sat a young woman who looked about 22 at most. A battered black suitcase sat pressed to her chest like a shield. Blonde hair hung in damp strands plastered against her pale cheeks, and though she tried to sit upright, her whole body trembled. It wasn't just the chill. It was deeper, the kind of shivering born of exhaustion and fear bundled together. "You lost?" Luke asked cautiously, his hand still on the doorknob. The girl shook her head quickly. "No, I saw your sign." Luke followed her gaze to the faded paper taped crookedly in the front window. "Room for rent, unheard month. Inquire within." He had scribbled it last week after doing the math over and over again, and realizing the fridge was almost bare. Jacob needed new sneakers, and his hours at the garage weren't stretching like they used to. The girl's voice rushed in quickly, as if afraid the chance might vanish. "I've got cash," she said, fumbling in her bag. With a nervous flare of desperation, she pulled out damp bills, crumpled but real. 200. All of it's yours. I can pay the first month now." Luke stared at the money, then at her soaking figure. She didn't look like the regular drifters sometimes passing through. Her sweater ran thin, frayed at one elbow, jeans, tight to her legs from the soaking, boots scuffed but expensive once. She looked like someone who used to belong, someone who had fallen hard, and not long ago. "You got a name?" Luke asked. Her mouth opened, closed, then finally, "Claire," she said. A pause. "Just Claire." Behind the door, Luke could hear the faint crackle of the heater and imagine Jacob finishing apple slices in front of the old television, fighting sleep. His boy deserved peace. Whoever this girl was, she also deserved mercy. Her wide eyes glistened, even in the dim light, and he could see her biting the inside of her cheek, trying not to cry. He rubbed the back of his neck, sighed, and stepped aside. "All right, come on then. Shoes by the door, floors creak, and don't wake the kid." Claire blinked at him, stunned. "Really?" "Yeah," he said gruffly. "But don't make me regret it." She rose stiffly, lifting the suitcase. A wince crossed her face, pain, weariness, or both, and she stepped forward into his home as if she was crossing into sacred ground she wasn't sure she deserved to touch. The small house lit gently as Luke flipped the hallway light. Worn furniture filled the rooms, second-hand pieces matched together by need, not design. The hardwood floor creaked, and the paint was tired, but it was clean and comfortable. Lived in. He nodded toward the back. "This one's yours. Small, but the bed holds. Sheets are fresh." Claire pushed the suitcase into the room, still gripping it as though someone might snatch it away. Her eyes softened for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered. Luke cleared his throat. "Bathrooms? Down the hall. Kitchen's yours too. Label whatever's in the fridge." She nodded fast. "I won't be any trouble, I swear." "I've got a 6-year-old, he warned gently. "Jacob, good kid. But I don't bring strangers around much." For a flicker her eyes warmed. "I won't be trouble," she repeated, less shaky this time. Steady. He believed her. Against logic, but he did. "We'll figure out details tomorrow. For now, you need towels." "I'll manage." she said quickly, almost shamefully. He shook his head, left, then returned with a folded towel and thick blanket. She took them slowly, blinking fast, voice rasping. I mean it. Thank you. He gave a single nod. Night, Claire. After he left, she lingered in the doorway, letting her eyes adjust to the dim, narrow hallway, before pressing her door shut softly and exhaling like she'd been holding her breath for days. In the kitchen, Luke poured himself a glass of water, staring out the rain-speckled window. He should have demanded more answers, asked for ID, a reference, but something in her presence was nakedly honest. His eyes drifted to the fridge, where Jacob's crooked crayon drawing hung by a magnet. 3 stick figures beneath a wide sun. A family. Luke stared at the third figure next to him and Jacob, then shook his head. He took a long sip. Sometimes people just needed a hand, and sometimes those who arrived out of nowhere ended up changing everything. By the next morning, the rain was gone. The curtains let in soft streaks of grayish light, and the ground outside steamed faintly from its soaking. Luke padded down the hall with hot coffee, cracking warmth between his palms. Jacob was already awake, cross-legged on the worn rug with his toy truck missing wheels, making engine noises only a boy could. Sleep okay, bud? Luke asked. Jacob nodded, eyes quick and curious. I heard someone come in. Yeah, Luke admitted. Her name's Claire. She's gonna stay a bit. Jacob's eyebrows rose. Is she nice? She seemed polite, Luke said, sipping coffee. A soft creak drew both their eyes. Claire emerged shyly from her room. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, her clothes now dry but the same as the night before. She held the towel and folded, blanket firmly, like she didn't want to look as if she owed anything. Good morning, she offered quietly. I washed these. You didn't have to, Luke said. I know, Jacob peeked curiously from behind Luke, and Claire's face warmed. She crouched down to his level. You must be Jacob, the boy puffed proudly. I'm 6. Well, 6 is the perfect age, she smiled. I was 6 once, too. He giggled, and Luke, standing back, felt his shoulders ease a little. Days blurred quickly. Claire became almost invisible in the house, never intrusive, but quietly stitched into the fabric of their routine. She made her bed every morning with military precision, cooked without fuss, washed dishes without being asked. Sticky notes with small kindnesses began to appear on the fridge. Eat before you fall asleep at the table. Jacob blossomed under her patience, folding paper cranes together, giggling when she read The Secret Garden, even learning to spell harder, words because she corrected them with gentleness. Luke noticed things, though, the way she crossed her ankles neatly when seated, the graceful polish of her hand movements as if she'd once trained in ballet or piano, the scent of her almond and orchid cream, the way her imported toothbrush sat beside their cheap brands, the classical music drifting under her door. These were not the elements of an ordinary drifter. She didn't talk about her past, but Luke was no fool. As a mechanic, he knew when things didn't fit. Claire carried herself like someone who'd been raised beneath chandeliers but fallen out of orbit, and though she didn't ask for sympathy, though she gave nothing away, he knew. Her story ran deeper. Still, she made Jacob laugh again. Still, her presence made the house lighter. Sometimes Luke came home late to find her and Jacob collapsed, asleep on the couch together, a book sprawled across her ribcage, both their faces soft with safety. And in those moments Luke realized her arrival, however temporary, had given them something steady, real, alive. Then it happened, on a quiet Tuesday, kitchen warm with soft jazz from the crackling radio. Luke slipped home early, just in time, to see Claire barefoot, humming as she dried dishes in the low glow. As she bent to place a plate away, something slid from her sweater pocket, clinking low to the floor. Luke bent down instinctively. A silver locket, elegant and delicate. He opened it before thinking. Two small portraits smiled back. A man, strong and suited, and beside him a woman with the same sea-glass eyes as Claire. The locket's back glimmered with engraving. To Claire, love, Dad. And under in smaller gold script, W.R. Montgomery. For a long second Luke could do nothing but stare. The name was inescapable. William R. Montgomery, the billionaire real estate mogul whose slick smile hung from billboards, whose hand had reshaped entire counties into luxury wastelands. The same man who had stripped funds from the community shelter where Luke and his late wife had once given their time. Claire froze when she saw the locket in his hand. Her face drained. "Please," her voice cracked, "just give it back." Luke pressed it into her palm without speaking. She took it, turned away, and vanished to her room. That night, Luke lay awake. Sleep wouldn't touch him. He sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, the glow of his old laptop flickering across his tired eyes. His fingers hovered, then typed, "Claire Montgomery." And there they were. Dozens of images. Smiling beneath red carpet lights, photographed at benefits, elegant gowns under city chandeliers. He typed Claire Montgomery into the search bar and scrolled. Through dozens of images, red carpet events, charity galas, vacation photos on private beaches. And there she was, smaller, younger, hair shorter, eyes brighter, posing beside her father in front of a marble fireplace. The caption read, "CEO William Montgomery with daughter Claire at the governor's gala." Luke leaned back, hand over his mouth. So it was true. She had not just wandered onto his porch one rainy night. She had walked away from a life of unimaginable wealth, power, influence. And here she was, folding laundry in his living room, teaching his son how to fold cranes, cleaning floors, cooking dinner, sleeping in a room that leaked when it rained. He could have asked questions, could have demanded answers, could have told her to leave. But he didn't. Instead, he opened the spice cabinet, pulled out cinnamon and sugar, and started making dough. The next morning, Claire woke to the smell of baking bread. She padded into the kitchen, her oversized hoodie slipping off one shoulder. She stopped when she saw the plate waiting for her, still warm, the crust golden, steam rising gently. Beside it, a ceramic mug filled with honey-sweetened tea and a note written in Luke's steady, clumsy handwriting on a piece of brown paper towel. "In this house, if a daughter needs a father, even for just a few days, I can try to fill the part, no questions asked." Claire stood still for a long moment holding the paper. Then she sat down, tore off a corner of the bread, and ate it slowly, quietly, tears slipping down her cheeks and disappearing into her lap. Upstairs, Jacob stirred awake, calling her name. She wiped her eyes, folded the note gently, and tucked it into the pocket of her hoodie right next to the locket. That morning, she didn't run. She stayed. The house was quiet again. It had been 3 days since the locket incident, and though Claire and Luke kept moving through routines like nothing had happened, something had shifted. Claire no longer avoided his eyes, and Luke no longer questioned the elegant details that didn't match her supposed story. It was Jacob who finally bridged the silence. One rainy afternoon, he came home muddy and frustrated because another boy had made fun of his shoes. Claire knelt down to untie his laces, wiping the grime from his ankles with a warm towel. Her voice was soft but firm. "You're not what you wear, Jacob. You're what you do for others." He looked up. "Is that what your dad told you?" She hesitated, froze just for a second, then quietly. "No, it's what he forgot." That night, while Jacob slept, curled up with a paper crane in one hand, Claire sat at the kitchen table long after Luke had finished the dishes. She nursed a mug of lukewarm tea and stared out the window as if weighing whether the storm outside was worth walking into. Finally, she spoke. "You know who I am now, don't you?" Luke sat across from her. He didn't nod. He didn't deny it. Claire looked down at the mug in her hands. My father is William Montgomery, she said, CEO of Montgomery Properties. Maybe the wealthiest man in the state. Luke stayed quiet. Men just announced the cancellation of a housing project in East Briarwood, she continued. You've probably heard families were counting on it, but they're not just numbers to me. Her voice cracked. My mother used to teach there. Volunteer literacy classes at the Briarwood Community Center. She loved that place. Said it reminded her of the life she could have had, the one she gave up when she married him. Luke leaned back, arms crossed, listening. Claire took a breath. I found out he was going to demolish the whole area, not just the project, the center too, for another luxury development, gated townhomes. He didn't even hesitate. She swallowed. I confronted him. Said I'd tell the press, the board, whoever would listen. He laughed. Her hand gripped the mug tighter. He said, No one listens to a girl who's never worked a day in her life. Then told me, if I wanted to see the world, I could go play poor. She looked up, eyes bright with something between fury and heartbreak. He told me the silence between them was heavy but not uncomfortable. I left that night, took what I could fit in a suitcase, trained on, lost my wallet, found your porch. Luke studied her. You haven't talked to him since. Claire shook her head. I don't want his money or his name. I just want to live a real life with real people. Luke rubbed his jaw. And this is real to you. Claire's eyes softened. You didn't ask questions. You gave me bread and tea. Jacob smiles in his sleep again. I haven't heard laughter in a house in years. She paused. You fixed more in a week than my father did with $1 billion. Luke looked. Down, flushing slightly. I don't need much, she added. Just a place where I don't have to pretend, where kindness isn't transactional. She glanced around. Cracked tile, flickering light bulb, the scent of cinnamon clinging to the air. It's not a mansion, she said, but it's the first place that's ever felt like home. They sat in silence after that. Outside, the storm rolled on, steady and relentless. But inside, something had settled. Not peace, but maybe understanding. A quiet truce between two people carrying more than they ever meant to, choosing finally not to carry it alone. It was just after 9 when the headlights swept across the front window. Claire saw them first. She was drying a plate in the kitchen. Luke stood at the stove flipping grilled cheese sandwiches for a late dinner. Jacob was already upstairs, fast asleep, a crumpled soccer jersey still in hand. She froze, hand mid-mouth motion. Luke turned. You okay? But Claire didn't respond. She moved to the window. Across the street, a black SUV had pulled up. Tinted windows, engine idling. Definitely not a neighborhood car. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out, tall, tailored, clipboard in hand. His coat was too pressed for the muddy curb. Hair slicked, shoes polished to a mirror shine. The kind of man who didn't knock, he announced. Stay here, Claire said under her breath. Yeah, that's not happening, Luke muttered, already heading for the door. The knock came, sharp, confident. Luke cracked it open, blocking the view behind him. Evening, the man said. I'm looking for Claire Montgomery. Luke braced his arm on the frame. And who might you be? The man flipped open a leather wallet with sleek ID. Thomas Langley, executive aide to Mr. William Montgomery. I'm here to escort Miss Montgomery home. Claire stepped forward. Her voice was quiet but firm. I'm not going anywhere. Langley's eyes locked on hers. Claire, this detour has gone on long enough. Your father's ready to move past it, but it's time to return. There are expectations. She crossed her arms. Tell him I'm done living for his expectations. Langley's jaw twitched. Then you leave me no choice but to contact authorities. You're listed as missing. Technically, this could qualify as unlawful harboring. She's not missing, Luke said calmly. She's right here voluntarily. Langley narrowed his eyes. And you are Luke Bennett, landlord, father. The guy whose kitchen smells like grilled cheese. Also the guy you're not intimidating tonight. Claire stepped forward. Luke. But Luke held his ground, voice low and steady. You think you can show up, flash a title, and drag her back like she's some runaway socialite? Not going to happen. Langley's tone cooled. This is a family matter. No, Luke shot back. This is a control matter. She walked away from a name, and you all can't stand that she didn't come crawling back. Claire's breath hitched. Langley tried one last time. Let me be clear. But Luke stepped onto the porch, rain misting his flannel shirt. No, let me be clear. He looked Langley dead in the eyes. She doesn't need a mansion or gold-plated initials. She needs safety, respect, a place where no one measures her by her last name. Another step forward. She doesn't need Apollos. She needs to be a person. Langley faltered just slightly. Luke's voice dropped. She's home here, and unless you've got a court order or the guts to come back without hiding behind your boss's name, I suggest you walk away. Silence. Langley adjusted his cuffs. This isn't over. I know, Claire said. That's why he's afraid. Langley turned, walked to the SUV and drove off. Luke stood there, damp, breathing deep. Inside, Claire watched him, stunned. He stepped in and closed the door. Hope you still want grilled cheese, he said, trying for lightness. But his voice cracked. Something had shifted. Claire let out a breath. Half laugh, half sob. I do, she whispered. They ate insolence, steam rising, house warm despite the storm. Outside the wind picked up, but inside a line had been drawn, not with threats, but with presence. Claire had been defended before by lawyers, assistants, security. But this was different. Tonight she was defended by someone who saw her, not her name, not out of duty, but because she mattered, not to a legacy to him. The first article dropped on a Wednesday. Not front page, not yet, but it spread fast. Montgomery Properties accused of forcing out low-income families for profit. The story exposed rezoning manipulation, quiet title acquisitions, and shady permits that led to the destruction of Briarwood's community center and public housing. But it didn't name Claire. Not yet. At the kitchen table, she watched the report play on the old TV above the fridge. Her face was calm, but her fingers trembled around her coffee mug. Luke had asked her once gently if she was sure. She had nodded. I've lived behind walls long enough, she said. It's time someone let the truth in. It took her 3 nights to collect everything. Emails, reports, memos. She used Luke's laptop to encrypt and send it to an investigative journalist she trusted. Luke never asked for details. He just left her tea and silence. But that silence didn't last. By Friday, reporters were calling. Then showing up, neighbors peeked through blinds. Cars slowed outside the house. A camera crew even knocked while Jacob ate cereal in his dinosaur pajamas. Claire apologized over and over. Luke only said, You did the right thing. The rest is just noise. But the noise kept growing. A week later, a black town car pulled up to the curb. It wasn't a messenger this time. It was him. Claire spotted her father through the kitchen window. William Montgomery in a perfectly pressed suit, silver cufflinks, gleaming. His presence was commanding even from across the street. Luke opened the door before he could knock. Montgomery didn't smile. Mr. Bennett, he said, I believe we've become entangled. Luke remained silent. I came to make this simple, he continued, holding out a thick, sealed envelope. There's enough here to make this go away. Luke didn't touch it. Montgomery's voice tightened. You're a father. You know what it means to protect your child. Luke stepped forward, quiet but firm. So do you. He paused. But it looks like we have different definitions of what a child really needs. Montgomery's expression cracked just slightly. Luke shut the door without another word. That evening, Jacob biked home from school like always. Claire was in the front yard pulling weeds. Luke worked on the porch siding. None of them saw the black sedan until it was too late. The driver on the phone drifted too close to the sidewalk. Jacob swerved, lost control, hit the curb hard. The bike flipped. He landed with a sickening thud. Claire screamed. Luke dropped his tools and ran, but Claire was already there. She scooped Jacob into her arms, his head lulled against her shoulder, blood trickling from a gash above his eye. One arm hung limp and twisted. He was conscious but dazed. The sky opened up with sudden rain as he bolted into the street barefoot and soaked. A neighbor saw them and threw open a car door. Claire sat with Jacob in the back seat the entire ride, whispering, "You're okay. I've got you. I've got you." At the hospital, she wouldn't let go of him. Not for the nurse, not for anyone. When doctors finally wheeled Jacob away, Claire collapsed. Outside the ER doors, niche hitting the tile with a dull, echoing thud. She didn't cry out. She folded her hands, lowered her forehead, and shook in silence, as if praying or pleading or simply breaking. Luke found her minutes later, drenched and pale. He didn't speak, just sat beside her and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. Behind the closed doors, machines beeped steadily. Jacob would be okay. A fractured arm, mild concussion, no internal damage. But something deeper had cracked that night. Not Jacob's bones, not just Claire's heart. Something bigger. The illusion that they could stay invisible forever. Because now the fight between truth and power wasn't just a headline anymore. It had come to their street, to their doorstep, and it had nearly taken their child. The news broke 3 days after Jacob was discharged from the hospital. Claire had barely slept. She stayed at his bedside each night, curled in the recliner with knees tucked beneath a blanket. Luke watched her from the doorway more than once, struck, not by the grief in her eyes, but by the fierce protectiveness, the kind that can't be bought or taught, only earned. Then the world shifted. Local headlines became national within hours. Whistleblower exposes massive housing displacement scheme by Montgomery Properties. Exclusive internal documents suggest coordinated city corruption. Claire's files, now verified, and cross-checkered, included memos, signatures, and emails detailing forced gentrification in multiple low-enemy neighborhoods. Properties were undervalued, residents pushed out quietly, and land flipped for luxury development under shell companies. It wasn't just Briarwood, it was a blueprint. By week's end, protests surrounded Montgomery headquarters. Former employees stepped forward. So did displaced families. City council members who had quietly backed Montgomery's initiatives scrambled to explain themselves. Under pressure, William Montgomery held a press conference. He stood in front of American flags flanked by lawyers tied slightly askew. The first visible crack in his polished image. With cameras rolling, he cleared his throat and announced his resignation in the interest of public trust. He called the allegations deeply disturbing, promised cooperation, gave no apology. Claire watched it from Luke's couch, Jacob leaning against her cast covered in doodles and lightning bolts. She didn't cheer, didn't smile. She simply said, "He never thought I'd follow through." Luke handed her a cup of tea. "You did more than follow through," he said. "You stopped him." Claire shook her head. "We stopped him." Word of her identity spread fast. The media painted her as a rebel heiress, a reverse Cinderella giving up a palace for a porch. Reporters camped outside the house for 2 days. Claire refused. Interviews. Luke too. They kept their lives small, quiet, close. What surprised them was the neighborhood. It rallied. Mrs. Cortez stood guard on the porch with a broom, shooing away strangers. Pastor Rick brought chili and told reporters to respect. Real courage. Kids from Jacob's school left drawings in the mailbox that read, "Thank you, Miss Claire." One morning, taped to the front door, was a handwritten sign. This house made history, but more importantly, it made a family. Luke stared at it a long time. Claire didn't return to her old life. There were lawyers, of course, estate advisors, board members, all urging her to reconsider. She had rights to shares, dividends, land. They offered settlements, control, silence. She declined them all. "I don't need power," she said one evening, helping Luke hang laundry in the backyard. "I just need peace." He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The warmth between them was no longer unspoken, just unhurried, a closeness born of shared struggle. Daily grace. The slow stitching of trust where something once torn had begun to heal. Jacob still called them both by name. But sometimes when Claire tucked his blanket or helped with math, he whispered, "Good night, Mom," and she would kiss his forehead without correcting him. It wasn't the world she'd been born into, but it was the one she chose. And for the first time in her life, it was enough. 1 year later, the little house on Pineview Lane still looked the same from the outside. White siding, creaky porch, and a sun-faded welcome mat. But inside, everything had changed. The walls were painted in soft, warm tones. A new couch filled the living room, but Jacob's old, scratched-up coffee table remained. The window that once held a room for rent sign now displayed a handmade garland of paper hearts and cranes. By the kitchen doorway where Jacob had marked his height in pencil, hung the original rental receipt, laminated and pinned. Claire Montgomery 1,000 paid in full. Luke never took it down. "This was the start of everything," he said. "Feels wrong to pretend it didn't matter." Claire now worked part-time at the Briarwood Art Center, teaching drawing to children who once lived in the neighborhood her father tried to erase. Most mornings she walked there with Jacob, skipping beside her, a canvas, tote slung over her shoulder. She no longer used her last name. To the town, she was just Claire, the one who baked cookies for council meetings, helped paint murals, and read to first graders even when she was off duty. Jacob still called her Miss Claire in public, but at home she packed his lunch, folded his socks, and kissed his forehead goodnight. He looked at her like kids do when they feel completely safe. She and Luke never announced anything. No ring, no titles. But the way she took his coat without asking, or how he brewed her coffee just right, said it all. Their love was quiet, steady, the kind that doesn't need to be declared to be real. That spring, the city hosted a ribbon cutting for a new low-income housing complex built on the grounds of the old Briarwood Center. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home for dozens of families, funded by grants, settlements, and a donation from an anonymous source. The mayor gave a short speech, then invited Claire to the stage. He wore a simple blue dress, the one from her mother's memorial, and her hair was tied back with a ribbon Jacob had picked out. She brought no speech, just 3 small items. First, the laminated receipt. "This was the moment I stopped being someone's daughter and became my own person." Next, a wooden key Jacob had carved in art class. The word home etched in crooked letters. The first key I ever received that opened something real. Finally, she unfolded a note. A letter from Luke left under her tea mug the morning after Jacob's accident. She read it aloud. "If you choose to go back to that world, I'll understand. But if you choose to stay, I'll build 1 more room onto this house. Not because I need a tenant, but because this home isn't full unless it has you in it." Her voice caught. But she smiled. The same soft smile she wore the night Luke first opened his door to her in the rain. "I used to have everything," she said. "But not a home, not a family. Now I don't have a name anyone cares about, and I've never felt richer." Applause followed. Jacob ran up and hugged her around the waist. That night, with Jacob asleep upstairs and the dishes done, Claire stood drawing her hands at the sink. Luke came up behind her, pulled out a chair, and placed something. Unthettable. A paper ring folded from waxed paper, the exact spiral she once taught Jacob to make. She raised an eyebrow. Is this an ambush? Luke smiled. It's not gold, no diamonds. No, no, he said. Just paper, but it'll never tear. As long as I'm the one holding it. Her eyes filled with tears. You know why this is perfect? She whispered. Why? Because you know how to hold something fragile without breaking it. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit like it had always belonged there. No altar, no audience, just a man, a woman, and a boy upstairs. A family built not by blood, but by choice. She had once been a princess in a house of marble. Now she was a mother, a teacher, a partner. And the only kingdom that mattered was this house, made of grilled cheese, bedtime stories, and quiet courage. All it cost was 100 thoughs and the bravery to stay. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe for more tales that heal, inspire, and stay with you. Thanks for watching.